Hello, Peter the Cat here. Jedi Master. Yeah, ooh. Anyway, down to business. I'm gonna see the Rise of Skywalker in a bit, and I thought it'd be fun to, review episodes 1 through 8 of Star Wars and talk about what it's like to watch all the movies in chronological order. I've marathoned them these past couple days, and I thought it'd be interesting to talk about my thoughts about the prequel trilogy, the original trilogy, and episode 7 and 8, and then I'll do an actual review of the Rise of Skywalker after I see it. So let's get started with the prequels. Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. It's kind of interesting seeing how everything that goes wrong in Star Wars, it's like all due to Palpatine manufacturing this trade dispute to come to power and everything. You know, he wasn't some warlord invading the galaxy and took over by force. He was subverting it from within. I think that's kind of interesting, the way Palpatine is characterized. Unfortunately, though, this movie is not really good. The acting is really wooden. You know, George Lucas apparently isn't really that good at writing or directing. When he doesn't have collaboration or anything, and it shows. You know, really wooden dialogue, really wooden acting, except from characters like Palpatine. You know, he has to subtly, pretend to not be evil and everything. And, we see the conflict on Naboo. We're told people are dying in droves, but we never see any of it. We're told Qui-Gon Jinn, he's kind of, doesn't agree with the Jedi or, the Jedi Order or anything, but we don't really see that other than, disagreeing over training Anakin. And Jar Jar Binks is annoying as all hell. And I don't want to harp on him too much since, everyone's already heard how annoying Jar Jar is. The Trade Federation, Newt Gunray, and the rest of I don't remember what they're called, Nemoidians or something, but their accents are just really weird. A lot of people thought Jar Jar and the Nemoidians were racist, and it makes it really difficult to follow what they're saying and what's going on some of the time. The movie just feels really underdeveloped. Watching this as the first Star Wars movie, not watching the original trilogy, Lucas is expecting you to know what the Jedi are, what the Force are. He expects you've seen the original trilogy already, so we don't get, explanations for what's going on and everything. And if you're watching, Star Wars for the first time, this is the first time you'll hear the Sith, but then they're not mentioned in the original trilogy, and then suddenly they're mentioned again in the sequel trilogy, and it's you don't really know anything about the Sith other than they're evil and they use the dark side of the Force. You have to read the expanded universe to get all the details on who Qui-Gon Jinn is, who's Darth Maul, and all this stuff. It's just really underdeveloped, really poor acting. Anakin Skywalker, played by Jake Lloyd. I just think it's really weird that George Lucas chose to start, Anakin's story when he's 9 years old, not when he's older or something. So we have to endure painful child acting. Again, I don't want to harp on this. Jake Lloyd suffered a lot of bullying for playing Anakin, and I don't want to belabor what people have already said a million times already. I also find it kind of weird that he meets Natalie Portman when she's 14 and he's 9, and this is where their love relationship begins. That's a little creepy. And he's also supposed to be the chosen one. And again, this is mentioned in the prequels, but never comes up in the original trilogy. Just setting up stuff that, viewers are going to wonder if they're watching these movies chronologically, why is this mentioned in the prequel trilogy but not the other movies? It's just really poorly constructed and everything. And the midi-chlorians, a lot of people really hated that. But to me, I'm not really a big fan of midi-chlorians because you don't really learn anything about the Force through them. They only exist to just be a power level indicator. How does Qui-Gon know that Anakin is the chosen one? Oh, because of his blood, the levels of midi-chlorians. It's not like something Anakin does with the Force. I mean, is winning a pod race, at age 9 not impressive enough? I don't know. Overall, oh yeah, and I can't forget Darth Maul. He's really cool, but he gets maybe only 2 lines in the movie and then he's killed off. Again, you don't get any development for who Darth Maul is unless you go into the Clone Wars TV show and the expanded universe and everything. It's just, the movie's really underdeveloped, and it's very clear that George Lucas did not have any checks and balances on this film. Yeah. Really bad way to start the whole Skywalker saga. Oh well. Honestly, the best thing to come out of Star Wars Episode 1 and the rest of the prequels, aside from all the silly memes, has to be the Harry Plinkett reviews from Red Letter Media that just totally deconstruct the prequels and explain in excruciating detail how not to make a movie. Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Pretty much the only lesson George Lucas learned from The Phantom Menace was to give Jar Jar Binks less screen time. Other than that, all the flaws that plagued The Phantom Menace, they're present in Attack of the Clones, like bad dialogue, bad acting, and everything. It's not really, the only thing that's really enjoyable are the action scenes, like, the beginning of the Clone Wars at the end of the movie. But other than that, you just have to sit through this long slog of painful romantic dialogue between Anakin and Padme, and there's supposed to be this mystery plot, who's trying to kill Padme, and Obi-Wan goes on an adventure going to Kamino and then to Geonosis, and they're trying to set up some sort of mystery plot around the clone army, who made them. But unfortunately, we don't really get satisfying answers to this stuff. Like, who is Sifo Dyas? We don't know. Read the Expanded Universe stuff in the Clone Wars TV show. Yeah, how does Anakin feel about being the Chosen One? And how does it affect him? Why did he go from being this, such a kind little child in Episode 1 to being this whiny brat of a Padawan? We don't know. Read the Expanded Universe and watch the Clone Wars TV show and everything. It's the same problem as Episode 1. There's just lack of development. I get what George Lucas was trying to go for with Anakin. Like, he wasn't trained as a Jedi from the beginning, and so he has attachments and everything, and that's why he's so angry and full of conflict and everything. But just presenting him as so whiny and everything, like, you don't get a chance to actually care about him and attach to him and everything. It's just really baffling, the decisions George Lucas made on this movie. And, the Obi-Wan's story arc, that's the only part that's really kind of enjoyable, especially since, he's got Jango Fett, a Boba Fett lookalike. Well, the original Boba Fett, really, because, since Boba's revealed to be an unaltered clone of him. Anakin is having nightmares about his mother from the previous movie, and he goes to Tatooine with Padme, and the same way how people felt like Canto Bight in Last Jedi was disconnected from everything else happening in that movie, I feel like the Tatooine scenes in Attack of the Clones is also just disconnected from everything else happening in the movie. Like, I don't know, I just didn't feel very invested in Shmi Skywalker as a character, so to me it's just, why are they doing this? I didn't really care. I mean, Anakin Skywalker falls to the dark side over mommy issues? What? Now, to be fair, it does make more sense, the direction George Lucas was going into. After you see Episode 3 and you see, okay, Anakin was like, doesn't want to lose his loved ones and everything, but, when you're just watching this movie for the first time, it's just, I don't know, Anakin trying to save his mother and everything just, for me, it just came out of the blue. And the scene afterward, when he kills all the Sand People, and he's talking to Padme, I killed them. I slaughtered them like animals. Like, this is supposed to be, like, a really heartbreaking scene where this is the first time Anakin has gotten a taste of the dark side, but, again, due to poor direction, Hayden Christensen's acting is just so whiny and everything. It's just, he just feels like a total sociopath, and you can't really feel sorry for him. So, it makes no sense why Padme would fall in love with him. Like, I have no idea what George Lucas was thinking. So, Attack of the Clones, it's another misfire. The only good dialogue in the movie comes from Obi-Wan, like when he's offered those death sticks and he does a Jedi mind trick, I don't want to sell you death sticks. I remember when I first saw this in the theater, that got a big laugh. And then when Anakin and Padme are trying to save Kenobi on Geonosis, and then he's like, oh, good job. That also got a big laugh in the theater. I remember that. And then, I guess I should mention Count Dooku really quickly. Yeah, Christopher Lee, great actor and everything, but given kind of piss-poor dialogue. The movie tries to act like maybe he's ambiguous, maybe he's not totally a villain when he's talking to Obi-Wan, we separated from the Republic because they're being controlled by Darth Sidious, but then Count Dooku tries to kill the heroes, and then he has a red lightsaber and he uses Force Lightning. I mean, any attempt to try and make Count Dooku an ambiguous character just goes out the window. It's obvious he's a bad guy, so is it really a surprise that at the end of the movie it's revealed, he was working with Sidious the whole time? I just... I wish that Attack of the Clones, the beginning of the Clone Wars was how the prequel started, rather than having Episode 1 be about a trade dispute or anything. That might have gotten people a bit more invested if this was the beginning of the Clone Wars in Episode 1 instead of having it in Episode 2 and we only see the beginning and the end of the Clone Wars. At least there's the Clone Wars TV show. Oh well. Last but not least, Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. And this is pretty much the best movie out of the prequel trilogy, but that's only because there's a bit more action in it. Kind of almost too much action. Like, there's 5 lightsaber battles in this movie. Like, couldn't some of this stuff be more spread out across episodes 1 and 2? Really, the dialogue, it's a little bit less cringy than the previous 2 movies, so Lucas is getting better at writing, but there are still moments where you just get horrendous dialogue. Like, the love dialogue between Anakin and Padme has not improved. Especially the one scene where Anakin has turned to the dark side and Padme is telling him, you're breaking my heart, you're going down a path I can't go down. Like, this should be, like, one of the most sad moments in the movie, but just the way Natalie Portman isn't allowed to emote much and is just really stilted, probably due to poor direction and everything. It doesn't have the weight it should be. And I kind of wish that Lucas had gone with the original idea he had. It was revealed a couple years ago that originally Padme was going to try and kill Anakin in that scene, stabbing him with a knife or something, but that was cut out for whatever reason. Oh, man. I just hope when Natalie Portman returns in Thor, Love and Thunder, she's given something better to do in that movie. The movie opens with Palpatine being kidnapped, and Anakin and Obi-Wan have to save him. And I guess George Lucas listened to people who said Anakin was too unlikable in Attack of the Clones. So in this movie, he really emphasizes how heroic Anakin is, and it kind of makes me wish this was the Anakin we saw, in the previous movies. So we actually like him, and so when he turns to the dark side, it actually feels tragic. So, I don't know, a little too much too late for me. And, he kills off Dooku. There's some really bad CGI in the scene where Dooku tries to crush Obi-Wan under some platforms and stuff. It just looks really weird. But anyway, we get a lot more time with Palpatine in this movie. And, seeing how he befriends Anakin and their relationship and how he manipulates him and everything. Like, on one hand, Anakin does kind of seem kind of stupid to not realize that Palpatine is evil. But at the same time, Ian McDiarmid just chews the scenery so much, and it's so fun watching him being sinister and evil and everything. He's probably one of the parts of the prequels that wasn't ruined. Yeah, they at least got Palpatine right. There is a bit more character development here, like having the relationship between Anakin and Palpatine, building off that. And so it does feel kind of like a betrayal when Obi-Wan tells Anakin that we want you to spy on him for the Jedi Council, and Anakin doesn't like this at all. He doesn't want to betray a friend, unaware that, his friend is secretly evil and everything. Obi-Wan goes on his own adventure trying to kill General Grievous, the new leader of the Separatists after Count Dooku dies. He's a really cool-looking character, but again, I kind of wish we knew who Grievous was. Again, you gotta read the tie-in novels and all the comics and watch the Clone Wars TV show if you want to know who Grievous is. What alien parents would even name their kid Grievous? Like, what the hell? But the fight between him and Grievous is pretty cool. I like how near the end, they both lose all their lightsabers and they're just having to punch each other and everything, and Obi-Wan is forced to kill Grievous with a blaster. Never thought you'd see a Jedi do that. While Anakin is handled better in this movie than the previous ones, since he's not being so whiny anymore, his turn to the dark side still feels kind of clunky. I remember reading in Empire magazine years ago when the movie came out that originally Anakin turning to the dark side to save Padme, that was not actually the original plan Lucas had. Like, the original reason was something more confusing where he just joins Palpatine for whatever because he wants more power, but test audiences found that confusing, and so George Lucas did extensive reshoots to try and make it so that, Anakin turns to the dark side to save Padme, and that's how we got, the famous scene of, the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise and everything. But unfortunately, all these reshoots caused certain subplots to get cut out, like Padme being one of the founders of the Rebel Alliance. So you have to watch those on the deleted scenes. But it would have been nice to see that stuff. But on the other hand, trying to imagine, the scene of Padme and with Mon Mothma, going to Palpatine with petitions and everything, like, that probably would have slowed down the pacing of the movie. So maybe it's better that they leave it on the cutting room floor. I don't know. But it's really surprising to me that Anakin turning to the dark side to save Padme, like, that wasn't George Lucas's original idea in the first place. Like, Anakin going to save his mother and everything, like, trying to save Padme is like, that's like the natural conclusion Lucas should have gone with in the first place. I mean, Anakin turns to the dark side, to save his loved ones, and then he's redeemed from the dark side to save Luke in Return of the Jedi. Like, that just fits so well for him. Why wasn't that Lucas's first choice for a character arc? So we get Anakin's fall to the dark side, and it happens pretty fast. I mean, he stops Mace Windu from killing Palpatine, and then he pledges his allegiance to the Sith and everything, and it just feels weird that Anakin would go from being a hero of the Republic to killing younglings in just the drop of a dime. Like, what the hell? And then we get the whole sequence of Order 66. And I know this isn't in the movie, but the Clone Wars TV show expanded on Order 66 and explained that it's actually microchips inside all the clones' brains that make them do Order 66. And on one hand, I feel like that kind of cheapens the Order 66 sequence. I think it's a lot more harrowing if you think of it as the clones actually betraying the Jedi and not being forced to. But on the other hand, microchips being planted in them to make sure they actually do carry out Order 66 and everything, that just makes Palpatine an even bigger bastard than before, and I kind of like that. So I have mixed feelings over that. And then we get the climatic battle between Obi-Wan and Anakin and Yoda versus Palpatine. Now, a lot of people didn't like how Yoda uses a lightsaber, and it looks really goofy and everything. Like, when I saw Attack of the Clones back then in the theater, like, people actually cheered when Yoda fought Count Dooku. So, I don't know. I guess it really just depends on the viewer. Some people think it looks silly, and others are okay with it. Me, I'm alright with it. I mean, I just didn't really care. I don't know. But, unfortunately, we still do get some really clunky dialogue, like when Obi-Wan says, "Only a Sith deals in absolutes," like, that itself is an absolute. I just feel like, I don't know, George Lucas just did not have an editor on this dialogue, and it feels like the expanded universe is trying to, like, clean up his mistakes. Like, the opening title crawl says, "There's heroes on both sides." How can there be heroes on both the Republic and the Separatists? And then the Clone Wars TV show tries to justify it by, showing, oh, there were actually some people in the Separatists that didn't want to go with the war or anything. I don't know. It's just, George Lucas needed someone to help proofread or whatever. The lightsaber fight between Obi-Wan and Anakin is really well done, and, it's amazing how quickly they do all their saber strikes and everything. And then we get to the scene where Anakin gets the rest of his limbs chopped off and is burned. And, Ewan McGregor acts his heart out. You were the chosen one and everything. And, it's really harrowing to watch, but I just wish, the rest of the movie had been just better structured and everything, so that it really feels, really sad that Obi-Wan had to, basically mutilate Anakin and condemn him to a life of being on constant life support for the rest of his existence and everything. And then, we get the ending. Luke and Leia are born, and they're hidden on Alderaan and Tatooine, and basically the way the movie ends, in a nice little bow that directly ties it to Episode 4. So it's a pretty good ending. I just wish that everything building up to it was done better. For years, the prequels have just been the butt of jokes among Star Wars fans, but in recent years, because of Disney Star Wars and people being disappointed with those movies, people are looking back on the prequels and realizing, you know what, there were actually some really good ideas here. I wouldn't go so far to say actually they're good movies, but I will say that, George Lucas was trying to be, creative and ambitious and try to do something different from the original trilogy and explain the foundation of how the Republic goes from, being a democracy to being taken over by the Empire and everything. And I also have to give credit to expanded universe stuff like James Luceno's Darth Plagueis novel. It basically explains who Sifo Dyas is, who was Darth Maul, and how Plagueis and Palpatine basically set up their whole plan in the prequel trilogy. And there's also, the new Disney canon, like the Darth Vader tie-in comics, explaining how Vader constructed his castle on Mustafar and everything. And one of the things that really bothers me about the prequel trilogy is how it brings up ideas like you can use the dark side to save people from death. But, of course, if you've watched the original trilogy, that never comes up again. But, tie-in stuff like the Vader comic, that actually follows up on it and shows Darth Vader, spoilers, trying to go into the netherworld of the Force to save Padme. So I'm glad that all the expanded universe stuff is like taking bits and pieces of the prequel trilogy and actually kind of doing something good with them. So with the prequels, there were good ideas there. It's just the execution that wasn't done very well.